Planning an event and wondering how you can give your attendees the best experience possible? Take advantage of customized meetings with Hilton that make it easier than ever to incorporate health, wellness, and great breaks. Hilton will help you build an extraordinary meeting that attendees will remember. To book your next meeting or event, go to meetings.hilton.com.
Are you followers?
Okay, so we're gonna probably add.
Welcome to GatherGeeks, a podcast by BizBash, the place where people passionate about meetings and events come together. Here are your hosts, BizBash CEO David Adler and Editor-in-Chief Beth Kormanik.
Hi, David.
Hey, Beth, here we are, another GatherGeek podcast.
Today, our guest is Jeff Guberman, CEO of McVeigh Global Meetings and Events. Guberman started out in technical theater production before shifting to the event world. He founded his own company, Fourth Wall Events, and then became a serial event entrepreneur. He founded Dynamic Drape and Decor and Formset before selling those companies, and working with private equity, created McVeigh Global Meetings and Events. And their clients include companies in sectors like tech, life sciences, finance, media, and more. And David, this conversation has both inspiration and tactical information for event professionals who want to know more about growing a business, investing in a business, and selling a business.
Yep, I think that we now have the famous word exit strategy for event organizers and people that are in the event industry. And for years, people really could not sell their businesses and have really succession plans.
Mm-hmm, exactly. And Guberman will talk about the sacrifices he made. That includes not taking a salary for over a year, how he found business partners in financing, and carefully defining the mission of his companies so that they're selling more than a commodity. So we'll pick up in this conversation at a turning point in his career, the recession of 2008, and how he used that low point to create a new professional future.
Tell us the story of the recession, and then we'll get into how you sort of, over the last 10 years, really created an empire.
Yeah. So we did mainly production, creative, big parties, general sessions for several years. And then we started getting into logistics, and we hired some logistics people, and about maybe a third of our business at that point was the meeting planning, event planning side compared to the production creative world. When the recession hit,
explain what those two worlds are to someone that does not know. Like, what is the attributes of the production world versus the meeting world, and how are they different?
Well, you really have three different worlds, I would say, in our area of the business. So you have the production world, which is typically the general sessions. It's very creative, but it's also very tech heavy. You need to know rigging and lighting and audio and video. And in some cases, the creative is the most important part. In other cases, the creative is much less important. The creative is supplied in a lot of cases by your client. So it really depends on what your client's needs are there. The event design side is all of the exact same skills, but applied to a party. It's interesting because the production people don't like doing event design, and the event design people don't like production. It's the same exact business, but they just don't consider it part of what they do. So that was a big selling point for us for a lot of years, is that we liked both, and we were willing to do both. We were good at both.
Because most people do both. Right?
Or no, I find they don't.
Does a conference, for example, today, they're having event pieces of it now more than they've had before, maybe, right?
It's blending together.
It's
absolutely.
blending, but it wasn't then.
But if you look at the Jack Mortons of the world, and you call them and you say, we want you to do a gala, they're going to do it, but their executive producers don't want to do it.
They don't want to do it. Okay.
That's not what they love. That's not their passion. Whereas if you called one of the big famous event designers and you tell them you want them to do a general session, they'll do it.
But they don't really want to do it.
That's not what they do.
Yeah.
And we did both.
Right.
And so when we would do a big incentive event or a sales meeting for our clients, all we do is corporate. And we would say to them, we're going to give you the best general session you've ever had, plus an incredible gala, and come up with really interesting creative ideas for both. That was a big winner for us, because that was unusual.
Do they also merge together in terms of some DNA aspects of them?
Sure.
So you have to know how to do
You have to.
in many cases.
But if you consider most of those types of events that happen around the world, they don't blend together. In a lot of cases, you have your production company, and then your meeting planning company calls the DMC and books their gala. So they really have nothing to do with each other.
Interesting.
So we were able to blend them together, and that helped from a cost perspective. So we didn't have 2 lighting designers in the room. We had 1 lighting designer. But we were also able to tie branding and messaging in throughout the entire experience. So we were able to better fit our clients' strategic goals.
Okay. So we're at 2009.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk about how you built the foundation for your next chapter.
So in one day, basically, we lost about 80% of our business.
And this was was there a time frame? Was there like a moment?
It was sometime in February
of 2009. With the recession, the big downturn happened in 2008 in September?
In the end of 2008.
Right.
And so we had a lot of clients that put things on hold but hadn't canceled. Early 2009, they all canceled. And so we had a very tough first half of that year. And we were very blessed and lucky that we replaced most of that business this year and diversified what we were doing.
Right, but tell us what was it like? What did it feel like that day?
Oh, it's terrifying.
It's a feeling that you don't want to necessarily talk about.
No,
but it would be helpful.
It was awful. I had to lay people off. I have no problem.
How many people did you have in your team at that point?
I probably had 12 or 13 at
relatively
that point.
Small, but you knew all of them intimately.
Oh, absolutely. They were friends.
Yeah.
They were people I cared about. And so we had to lay off people that were doing great work. And I don't have any problem firing somebody that needs to be fired, deserves to be fired.
Right.
But somebody that's doing their best and doing incredible work, that was devastating.
Right.
I was considering, do I need to go get a job? I hadn't had a job in many years. How do I support this? So I stopped taking a salary. I didn't take a salary for over a year. And when I came back at a very reduced salary. And it was a very scary time.
This is 2009.
Mm-hmm.
So how did you reinvent yourself? This is the story. This is an American story.
Well, we did a lot of different things. So one thing we did is we realized that our big differentiator was our ability to do incredible creative. And so we started selling our creative to third parties. So the big third parties became our clients, and we were their creative arm.
Explain to people what a third party is.
BI Worldwide is an example. They were one of our largest clients for a while, where they act as the outsourced meeting planning or event planning arm of a big corporation. And so instead of marketing to every big corporation under the sun, we went to the third parties and marketed to them and let them be an aggregator for us. And so we would help them win business, and then we would service that business for them. The third parties struggle with being a commodity. And so the only differentiators that they really have are their price and their creative ability. They don't have typically a lot of creative ability. So we were able to help move that needle for them and help them win a lot of business.
So who are the other third-party aggregators that
it could be Merit, Carlson,
just so people know what the family of, if they haven't heard of one.
Carlson First, which is a more New York centric one. Ashfield, Bishop McCann,
right. Okay.
And McVeigh Associates at the time.
Right.
So there are a lot of them, but there are probably 25 of the biggest.
And rather than hiring freelance help, they're hiring another firm entirely.
Right.
As a studio or a way that they can solve a lot of problems.
Exactly.
As opposed to have to manage.
When it became a risk-free way for them to win business, because we put a lot of time and energy and money into big RFPs for them. And they would then win the business based on the strength of the creative. And then hopefully we were able to continue that work for them. So it was very good for both of us. At that time, I also started another company called Dynamic Drape and Decor, which was a scenic production and drapery rental company here in New York City.
So why did you do that? Most people stick to what what their core business is, and you made the decision to sort of horizontally integrate. Is that what I would say? Is that vertically?
It's more vertical.
Vertical, yeah. Vertical integration, so that you can get all the business.
Exactly.
You can design something and you can sell them something.
Right.
Okay.
It was a scene shop that there was a scene shop that I worked at when I was in college in Atlantic City that later moved to West Virginia, and they were building all of our scenery. And a big part of Fourth Wall Events deliverable was big scenery. So we were creating creative environments on beaches and in warehouses and aircraft hangars around the world. So the scenery was critical to what we were doing. And so I was having a hard time controlling the product that was being delivered. So I decided to start my own scene shop, and I did it with the gentleman who owned the scene shop that I worked at when I was in college. About a month before we were slated to open, he passed away. Ooh. And so we had this sort of no-go moment where we had to decide, do we want to continue forward without him? And I decided to continue forward. And what I decided to do was add the drapery rental element to it, because it was a commodity that would allow me to cash flow the scenery side.
Okay, tell that in English.
Okay, so drapery rental is it's a service business where you go in and you set up rental drapery. Think about the president standing in front of the blue drapery.
Right.
The drape is the same from company to company. There's minor differences, and people claim that theirs is better for one reason or another. But at the end of the day, it's all the same drape. So what it really is a service business. So I was able to take the staff that I needed to keep handy for building scenery and turn them into drapery setup people while I was trying to build the scenery business. So I had a seamstress that I needed to have on staff for building scenery, and she spent all of her days building drapery for me. And then we would go out and set it up. And then when a big scenic build came in, I had the team ready to go.
This is your own business that you were renting to yourself, in a sense.
Yes, as well as all of my competitors.
And then but you had to keep that kind of separate, right? People feel that they were.
It was a completely separate company, separate sales team, separate operations team. I was the only thing that they had in common. Jackie Bernstein was my first client, and she was a competitor of Fourth Wall Events at the time, but she was very supportive, as well as a lot of my other competitors were very supportive of us, and it grew very quickly.
When you say it grew. What does that mean? I mean, you handed up. What are the metrics of that kind of business?
So revenue is the biggest metric on it. Okay. Full-time employees. After the first year, we were at like 7 or 8 full-time employees. I sold that business in 2014. And I think at that point we had about 25 full-time employees. And so revenue is certainly the biggest metric. EBITDA is the next most important metric. Right. We were EBITDA positive our first year. So we were profitable our first year. Not cash flow positive, because we're investing a lot of money in drapery, and equipment and tools. So
that's business number 2, right?
Yes.
And that in the vertical integration world that you're getting into here.
So in 2014, I sold that to Quest Drape, and that became their New York office. At the same time, we had decided to start building a modular scenic product to compete with Atomic. So this is a unique product that could come in and be set up with no rigging, up to 20 feet tall. That was a really interesting, exciting scenic experience. And so...
What was that called?
That was called FormSet.
FormSet. Okay.
And so I started developing FormSet in 2015. When we sold Dynamic, we carved out FormSet to keep that. And so we really only sold the drapery rental side of the business to Quest. And so why did you then make that decision to sell that piece of it? What were the dynamics of that piece of it that made it worthwhile to sell? There was a couple of factors in there. First was that the distraction of doing the drape was keeping me away from FormSet, and I believed that FormSet was the bigger opportunity. Drape Kings was a huge competitor of ours, and they are still a major player in the New York drape world. And instead of competing with them, I'd rather let Quest compete with them. And it also allowed me to pull some cash off the table to be able to invest back into FormSet. So this is a pure business decision. Absolutely. More than anything else. And I guess one of the rules is don't get emotional. Absolutely. Is that like... Yes. You should start every business knowing where you want it to end. Yes. And you did that with this? Did you actually plan that? Yes. Yes, absolutely. And the FormSet piece, why did you think that is the bigger opportunity? I mean, I think I know. Because it wasn't a commodity.
Okay. Talk about that a little bit.
So this was a proprietary design. We had at the time, I think 12 different designs that you can mix and match or pick and choose from. There was a couple of things that Atomic offered that had similarities, but there was nothing that was just like it. And so we were able to really differentiate ourselves. We created a custom rendering software where people could create their own renderings using our product on our website. So it allowed people to be able to sell our product to their clients. And the demand was huge. We could barely keep up with the demand.
And how did that grow? What's the state of that now, that business?
So that was acquired by Quest. Well, we made a decision to go to Quest with this product once we had a certain level of traction, and we asked them to distribute it across the country for us. So they had at that point 20-something offices. And so we negotiated a distribution agreement with Quest so that they had to pay us a certain amount upfront for the product that financed the manufacturing of the product. They warehoused it, they dealt with it, and then we did a revenue split, and we had the lion's share of the revenue. So it was no risk for us. But the other thing about it was that Quest is owned by private equity. And so their only metric that they care about is EBITDA.
EBITDA means earnings before
interest, tax, depreciation, and amortization.
It's the word in my old company. One of our slogans was "Practice EBITDA now."
I like that. It basically means free cash flow.
Right.
And we were a very CapEx or a capital expenditure heavy business. The nice thing about EBITDA as a metrics is that when you're spending a lot of money on buying things, it doesn't count.
Right.
So you could be losing millions of dollars and have the best EBITDA in the world.
But when you started, you didn't know a lot of this start of the world, or did you? I mean, is it?
No, I learned it all along the way.
What we're trying to do is make this a primer for people to be more entrepreneurial about their event businesses.
Right.
And I think you're like the perfect example of someone that sort of learned as you went and got more sophisticated and more sophisticated. And we'll talk about today's world in a minute. But so what was the next thing that happened? Did that worked well?
Well, so in structuring the deal with Quest the way that I did, because EBITDA is the only metric that they care about, I structured it so that they had no choice but to buy me. And so I expected 4 years for them to buy me. After 2 years, they came and asked to buy it. And we negotiated a deal that worked. And in 2016, I sold that business. And that was a very successful exit.
So you were able
us.
to sort of create some cash that you needed to, what we call a dry powder.
Yes.
To take your next move.
Right. Exactly.
And so you still have, the planning company, Fourth Wall, and you divested now of all of these other businesses, but you turned it into cash.
Well, and actually, I bought another business.
Okay, let's go into that.
So in 2016, about the exact same time I sold FormSet, I bought Discover New York, which was a leisure destination management company in New York City. And we bought that really as a practice because we knew we wanted to buy more businesses, and I'd sold several but hadn't bought any. And this was a very small, no-risk business to buy. And it was an industry that was interesting to me. It also had a lot of crossover into what Fourth Wall was doing. So while it wasn't the same business, I understood the business. And so we bought that and folded it into Fourth Wall for 1 year just to play with it and see what we could learn. And then a year later, we bought their largest competitor, Beyond Times Square, and spun Discover New York into Beyond Times Square and created a larger business by combining those two.
So, but the strategy around buying other service companies is a little bit different than people that are manufacturing things or selling. So and you're buying it with their money in a sense.
Yes.
So how does it work? How would you explain it to another budding entrepreneur to think about buying another company, like a service company, to fold in?
Well, it's about speed to market.
Okay.
You can build it or you can buy it.
Okay.
If I buy it, depending on what I pay for it, then it's a lot faster to get to an exit than if I build it.
Right.
So if you come to it from the understanding that your long-term perspective is that you want to sell a business, businesses sell in our industry as a multiple of EBITDA. And so a small business might sell at 3 times EBITDA. A large business could sell up to 10, 12, or 14 times EBITDA. So if you can buy a business at 3 times and sell it at 10 times, you don't have to grow that business at all to make money. You still are hopefully going to grow the business. But the ability to fold these businesses together and turn them into something more valuable is
But
amazing.
also when you're buying a small business, a 3-time multiple business, you're also putting money down and then there's an earnout. Mm-hmm. And so you're in a sense betting on the future in many ways.
And it depends on the business. There's some businesses that you really want that earnout. I had an earnout. I had a very small earnout with Dynamic. I really didn't want much of an earnout. I wanted my money up front because I knew what I was trying to accomplish. With FormSet, I got the vast majority of my money up front. I got a small earnout. Mm-hmm. But in buying,
that's a different type. That's a different type of business than a straight service business.
Correct. Correct. With a service business, you're betting that client is going to still be there for many years. So part of it is about what the concentration among the clients are. So is 50% of their business from a single client who can decide at any moment to walk away? In which case you want a bigger percentage on the back end because you're betting that client hangs out. If you have, $1 million worth of revenue across 500 clients, if 1 client leaves, if 10 client leaves, it almost doesn't matter.
Right.
So you want more earnout on the back end, but it also is better for the entrepreneur because if that business grows, by you putting more energy into it, more money into it, investing in this business, if it grows, the seller will get the benefit of that as well.
Right, because they're in it with you, but you have to motivate the seller to feel like, even though it's not his business anymore, that he wants to stay engaged.
Absolutely.
And financially is one way of doing it. Are there other methods that you use to keep the the entrepreneur engaged?
I think it's empowerment.
Okay.
I think it's treating them like a partner, whether they are or not.
Right.
I think most of us do what we do for the money, but really we do it for the pride and we do it because we care.
Okay. So let's move on. This is just the middle of the story.
Yes.
So tell us what happened after that first. You had the practice. Mm-hmm. Then you did a tuck into the practice.
Yeah.
Next, what happened?
So then in 2018,
last year,
throughout this whole time, I'd been looking for acquisitions for Fourth Wall to buy, to grow Fourth Wall. We'd been trying to grow organically for years and we'd had some success with it, but not anywhere near as fast as I was looking for.
Right.
And so in 2016, we looked at McVeigh Associates to acquire them and they weren't ready to sell. We cold called them. And they weren't ready to sell.
Explain what kind of company that is and how it's different than what you do.
So they are a larger meeting planning company, a lot of pharma business. About 60% of their business was pharma. They also worked in insurance and cosmetics and a bunch of other things, but mostly pharma. Very little creative. They were not looking for creative. They had partners that they would bring to the table, but
you were one of them.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah. And so they do big volume. Fourth Wall would do 40 or 50 events a year. McVeigh would do 600, 700. And some of them were small, some of them were large, but it was a volume business, whereas Fourth Wall was all about, we're going to put an entire team on your event, and we're going to focus on it, and this will be their life for the next 6 months. And it was more of a turn and burn kind of business. Still high customer service, still McVeigh, yes. Still a lot of expectations of their clients. It was not easy business.
How many employees did McVeigh have in?
About 50.
50, okay.
Compared to at that point, we were like 25 or somewhere in that neighborhood. Right. And so we had looked to buy McVeigh and they weren't ready to sell. And in 2018, we heard that they were looking to sell. And so we started looking to raise money to be able to buy them. And so I cold called private equity companies trying to get debt financing.
Explain what that is to people, because our business, I think you mentioned it earlier, that we're about the creative side and not about the business side. And what I think you are is a perfect example of someone that brought both sides together.
Right. So a private equity company is, if you can consider them a private bank, they take investors on that are looking to grow their money, and the private equity company takes that money and invests in other companies. And so they'll own a portfolio of businesses that they might just be, they might own a small piece of a business, they might own all of a business, or they might just loan money to businesses or to other private equity companies. But they're really good at looking at small to medium-sized businesses and understanding what the risks are and where the investment would need to be to help it grow. And that was the best place for us to get financing.
So how did that happen, and what does that mean? What did that mean for your business as a lesson for others too?
Well, I learned about it through Quest. Quest is owned by private equity. Right. And when I was selling Dynamic, the CFO of Quest, who became a good friend, worked for the private equity company as their CFO. And he gave me my first tutorial on private equity, and I felt like I got a mini master's degree in M&A from him, mergers and acquisitions from him. And so through those contacts, we started making calls to other private equity companies looking for somebody who wanted to invest in our business and support us in buying McVeigh Associates.
We're going to take a little break and come right back after this message from Hilton. So when's the big event? Hilton's here for planners with their exclusive customized meetings. Become a wow maker and save time by letting Hilton help you present an extraordinary event, one that leads to memorable and meaningful connections. Visit meetings.hilton.com and let Hilton help you.
So how do you convince a private equity firm to invest in you, and what are they looking for, and what hoops did you have to go through to convince them that this is a good investment?
First, you have to know your numbers. You have to understand the business really well, because they come to this knowing that they don't understand the business. And so they're scared because there's so many intricacies to each industry, and they don't like to be in the same industry with lots of investments because that's risky for them. So they have to learn every new industry that they touch. So you have to really understand the business side of your industry. You have to have a great business plan and spell it all out for them in detail.
And how do you do that if you don't have a background in that? So what do? Do you hire someone? You have to understand EBITDA and things like that, which is maybe foreign, completely foreign to a lot of people in our industry, not to us.
Honestly, I just figured it out. And I don't know if what I presented...
Did you read a book?
I Googled.
You Googled? And what was the search term that you Googled?
I don't even remember, but I Googled for years. But I did read several books. I Googled business plans. I also started, sort of as a sideline, I started doing angel investing.
Oh, that's a great way to learn.
It was an amazing experience. I still do it to this day. I love it. I met a lot of entrepreneurs, and I had a lot of entrepreneurs pitch on their business. And while it's not quite the same pitch, it's close enough. And so I just watched and learned, and I duplicated what I liked, and I did a lot on my own.
When you look at a business, especially in our industry, what is it that gets you excited?
Something that's unique and different. We are in a commodity world, so it's got to be something that's different and defensible, something with recurring revenue. Fourth Wall had to bid on just about every event, one after another after another. It's awful. I'd rather business that I have a 3-year contract and it just comes to me, so that I know what's coming and it's predictable. It's really hard to manage a business that's unpredictable. So if you have a grocery store, you need years of information to be able to understand what your March is going to look like. And at the end of the day, you don't know what March is going to look like until it happens, because there's a big snowstorm and nobody comes out.
Right.
Whereas in our business, it's not that different, where I don't know what RFPs are coming through the door today. What is this business going to do for their events today? So if I can find a business that's really predictable, that's very exciting.
Why was McVeigh that? Because of their long-term contracts with the pharmaceutical companies?
Because of their contracts and the way that their contracts were built. Also, the pharma world is much more predictable than the area of the world that Fourth Wall was in, which was more the generic corporate. We did a lot of technology, and it was a lot of bigger business that we were doing. So our budgets were much higher than McVeigh budgets, but they did a lot more events. So again, like I said earlier, if you have $1 million of revenue across 500 clients, that's a lot safer than what we had.
So talk a little bit about the private equity partner. Like, what does the partnership look like, and how do you deal with them? Because you're now not in it yourself. You may be the primary owner of it, but you still have to report to other people because
I have a board. I have a board now. Yeah.
And so how does that, what does that look like in terms of how you operate your business and how you add more discipline to your business?
Well, let me explain how it came together, which I think might color that. So we cold called a private equity company called InfoCommerce Partners that owned a small meeting planning company in San Diego. And they had the brilliant idea of combining Fourth Wall Events and their company, which was called World Tech, into a single company, and together buying McVeigh. And so we, instead of growing our business by 2/3, we more than double, or actually by 1/3, we more than doubled our business by adding this other company together. And so they put in a lot of money. They helped us get the debt money. And so they were the private equity brains behind this at that point. Once they came to the table, they helped us deal with all of the banking. And they've been amazing to deal with. But so, while I am the largest shareholder, they are the majority owner in the business through all of the control that they have. So the chairman of the board is a member of InfoCommerce Partners, and he's a brilliant guy. It's like a marriage. If you don't like these people or even love these people, don't do it, because they control you and they become your boss. But I got very lucky that all of the members of that team, and it's a small team, are great to work with. They've become mentors to me. They care about the business. They are investing in the business, and they believe in us.
Well, you now have dry powder to do what you want to do with, I assume, right? Is that part of the beauty of this? Is that you can build?
That's exactly it. Yes. They are looking to put more money to work.
Right.
I am looking to buy more businesses.
So, and you now, tell us, like, what does this business look like now? What is the bigger picture of your business at this moment? And
so we're just short of 100 employees right now.
From 12 when you started? Or like years ago?
Years ago, yeah. We started with 3.
3. Okay, so you're 3 to 100.
Yes, we're about 100 employees right now, growing very rapidly. We're building our sales team, which both World Tech and McVeigh Associates had no sales team and really didn't try and sell. So we're really adding that sales pressure, and that's helping dramatically. We're adding creative components to everything that McVeigh Associates used to do. But we're also learning a lot from very experienced, very talented planners that they had. And so the teams are coming together. The integration of these 3 businesses is the hardest part of this. Buying the business was the easy part. It's bringing these 3 cultures together and creating one company. That's the hard part. And we're probably half or 2/3 of the way through that process. And I'm very excited at the results, but that's been the challenge.
Because you're practical. Mm-hmm. Like, how do you do this?
Yes. Well, and it's people. Yeah. It's making people feel like a part of this company. We're building a culture that people want to be a part of.
So how do you build this is like a very sort of big question, but how do you build a culture? How do you, I mean, I've been involved in lots of acquisitions and big companies and things like that. And it is the magic. It's how do you sort of create the culture that gets everybody rowing in the same direction?
Well, you make sure, I think the first part is you tell them what direction to row and why are you rowing in that direction. I think that in a lot of cases, people think that the event is what's important. The event's not what's important. The client's strategic goal is what's really important. The growing of the company is really important, but the event itself is just a tool to accomplish something. Right. And so it's helping them understand what that something is. It's letting them know that despite the fact that your company is much bigger, they're still important and you still really care about them and you get to know them as people. In my first couple of months, I flew around the country meeting just as many of our employees as I could and making sure I knew people's names and learning about their children and helping them understand that they're not just a number and they're not just a cog in this wheel. There's somebody that's really important, that we care about them. And so right now we're working hard to define our values across the company and create an internal brand that people feel really proud of.
The plan is to buy more companies, to buy more people. And I mean, you're watching PRA just did that with private equity.
Yes.
You're seeing what other companies that are on the move in our industry that you've heard of?
All of the big ones are on the move.
Give us an
MCI has been buying like crazy.
Buying crazy, yeah.
Amex has been buying like crazy.
Right.
BCD. I mean, I would love to know how many acquisitions BCD has done in the last 12 months.
Right.
Every
There's
large
a consolidation
company,
going on.
Yes.
And is that the big trend that you see?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it's been winding up for a lot of years. BI has been trying to acquire. Every large company is trying to acquire because organic growth in our industry is hard because you win one, you lose one. Right. And so it's a very slow growth. I have a feeling in 10 years, the landscape's going to be completely different. You're going to have a bunch of little guys and you're going to have a bunch of big guys, but you're not going to have much in the middle.
Right, right. Well, you're seeing that in the trade show business.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
Forma has bought up almost every big company. Reed and Forma are the two biggest right now. Mm-hmm. And you go to the association meetings and you see the small companies that are being romanced by the big companies who don't want to take the risk on starting something.
Right.
But they want to take the proven people that have some clients and some business and make it easier for them.
Exactly.
Which is exactly your formula, right?
Yes. Yes. And so right now, all of the medium-sized companies are being acquired. And so you've seen it with Grassroots being purchased and, you can bank Adler and you can go down the list. They're being eaten up one at a time.
What about in the association management field? MCI is in that world.
MCI's in everything now.
Yeah, they're in everything now. What about, and they're a company from Switzerland, I believe, is where they're from. Yeah. You're seeing a lot of overseas investment in our business because it's global. Yes. Our business is a global business.
Well, PRA
is all over the place now.
Yeah. And PRA was acquired by a European DMC, by Allied, and then spun off. And I think they closed. Allied ended up closing down their European operations, or a large percentage of their European operations, to focus on the U.S.
Right. And even on the technology side, Social Tables was just acquired by Cvent, which was acquired by another private equity operation that's buying up everything.
Yes.
Is this good? Are you optimistic about all of this, or does when a brand gets bought by someone so big, is it disappearing and the DNA disappears? How do you sort of make it so that the original reason that the companies were so good when they started stay good?
That's the trick, and that's the magic. Yeah. I don't want to use names and speak ill of any competitors.
You would never do that.
But there are some of our competitors that have been acquired that the acquirer has destroyed the business. Yeah. And we get business from clients that come to us and say, yeah, I don't really want to work with them anymore. The company I loved is gone. Yeah. And so that's the magic.
And that's how that's how the organic growth is happening now.
Yes.
Right? Because they're not really the people that they trusted, or they're moving on to another thing.
Yes, absolutely.
So that's interesting. That do you see the business fundamentally changing where, like you said earlier, it's not about the event. It's kind of about whatever the tactic is to solve the problem of the company.
Yes.
So it may not be an event anymore.
So we are focusing on becoming a human connection agency. We're trying to think of all of the reasons that our clients use people to solve problems, and we're figuring out how to be there for them to support that.
So you're getting out of the event-specific business, unless that's the right tactic for solving the problem. So what are some of the other areas in the human connection business that are the big sort of components?
I mean, over the course of the next couple of years, we're going to be trying to grow into a lot of other human connection areas, including the virtual events, including some of the multi-hub events, or looking at more of the experiential world compared to the meeting world. So a lot of clients use a meeting when they should be using something experiential. And so we're trying to talk to our clients about how we can support their goal with this group of people, not using the tactic they're suggesting necessarily, but let us suggest to you how we can best accomplish that strategy. And our clients come to us in a lot of cases with an idea that I want to have a meeting and here's what we're going to work on. And here's how we're going to accomplish this. And our competitors, in many cases, are very happy to offer that service. And we are as well. But we would rather go to them and say, here's another way that we could bring these people together and get to that solution. So training is a big part of it. It's about how do you build this team or accomplish a goal as a team using a creative strategy.
Well, I totally agree. I mean, I think I've mentioned to you before that the learning and development piece is more important than ever. That Dreamforce is such an example of 180,000 people going to learn something and making it experiential at the same time. And AWS is about to have events that are going to have 200,000 people going to them.
Yes.
And convening power is the new marketing too.
Right.
In many cases. So do you see the multiples getting much bigger in our industry as the effectiveness of what you deliver becomes more important?
I think that's a hard question to answer right now because private equity companies don't know how to evaluate that. So a private equity company is going to pay less money for your business than a strategic partner will, like a third party. Mm-hmm. But the third party is probably going to fire half of your team, and it's going to be a little bit harder for that third party to keep the business alive.
That's so interesting. So that means that the third, when you say third party, that's a strategic.
Correct.
But the strategic will know immediately how to squeeze and consolidate and make more money. So they'll spend more money on it because their models are showing that the EBITDA that they're creating is worth so much more than what a private equity firm would be with no consolidation savings.
Right. Because they're going to get synergies that the private equity company won't.
Right.
So private equity company is looking for a great CEO and a great management team. And then perhaps they're going to do a roll up, or probably they're going to try and do a roll up, but the existing accounting team is going to remain.
Right.
The existing sales team is going to remain. Whereas once that third party acquires you, your accounting team is probably gone. Your CEO has a very short runway, and then they're gone. And you're able to get a lot of efficiencies out of it. And efficiency of scale in our business is critical.
Yeah.
The ability to negotiate with Marriott is a lot better as BCD than it is as a little mom and pop sitting in.
So you're you're a meeting planning company, or you're an event planning company. You've got 15 people. You're at this crossroads like you were at. What do you do? Do you sell back to a bigger company, or do you actually be the person that's going to buy up all these companies? Like, what is the roadmap for a typical young entrepreneur that's in the event business now?
I think the first question is, what is your life goal?
Well, how do you decide what your life goal is? Like, what are the options of a life goal? Go through some of the sort of the scenarios.
Well, at the end of your career, you can have a very large company that you are a CEO. You don't have a whole lot to do with events anymore, but you're the CEO of a bigger company. You could sell your company and maybe have relevance, maybe not, or you could die at your desk and you're gonna work until
servicing those customers,
servicing those few clients.
Every annual meeting that they've done for the last 40 years.
And so it's a risky business to continue to run that 15-person company, because that 15-person company has a dozen clients, something. And so it's a volatile world when you're that 15-person company, because you win a big one.
Scale though works when everybody.
Absolutely.
There's always drama in a small company, no matter what, right?
Yes.
Because you're depending on a couple of people.
Right. It's volatile.
Yeah.
It's a roller coaster ride.
So it's easier to be, but you have someone telling you what to do. So you have to be the kind of person that is okay having a few constraints, right?
Sure. Absolutely. Now, if you have a good acquirer, hopefully they know what your value is and what your talent is, and they allow you to really focus on those things.
How do you judge whether it's a good acquire or not? What are the questions that you look for? Like, you've been through this.
I think you're dating.
You're dating.
You're dating.
Like, what do you see in the dating process that you say, oh, these are the red flags?
Do they listen more than they talk?
Okay, rule. Jeff's rule.
Do they seem to care about the people?
Rule 2.
Because they're not going to want to understand what you excel at if they don't care about you as a person. Do they think they know everything?
Rule 3.
Yeah, rule 3.
Okay,
that might have to be rule 1.
Yeah, that could be rule 1.
Do they ask you for the strategy, or do they give you the strategy?
But do you want that? In some cases, you want the collaboration part of that.
Absolutely.
You want to have a melded version of strategy.
Well, if you're going to a third party or to a strategic who knows the industry, they've got their strategy and they're going to ask you for feedback.
Yeah.
And hopefully, if they're smart, they're going to elicit your help.
Right.
But they know their strategy, or they shouldn't be buying.
I mean, the private equity is a whole different game.
Private equity, they don't know our industry.
Right.
They shouldn't know our industry. They work in every industry.
Right.
And so they should be coming to you and saying, I'm buying you because you're going to sell me on a strategy.
Right.
Otherwise, what are they buying?
Right.
Unless it's part of a roll-up. And then somebody else should have that strategy.
Right.
Our private equity partners are some of the smartest people I've ever met. They bought into the strategy that I laid out.
Yeah, you don't want them running an event.
No, and they don't want to do that.
No.
But they are great at modeling financials, and they understand business very well. And as I'm presenting them businesses that I want to acquire, they ask great questions. But they are not the ones that are going to tell you how to grow that business. Right. That's not what they do.
So as we're kind of wrapping up here, you've put together this new architectural plan for a modern day, a human to human connection business. What is the differentiator that you guys have? What is in your mind in terms of strategy? And then the next question is, what do you want to be? How do you see your end of this thing? Or you're not going to sit there at your desk and pass away?
I would likely not die at my desk. We'll see, but probably not. I see us growing pretty dramatically over the next 5 years. And that'll be both organically and through acquisition. We're trying to add new services and create efficiencies. We're trying to make life easier on our team. We're also trying to bring in a lot of technology. I feel like our industry is 10 years behind the rest of the world on how do you plan a meeting?
Right.
So we're trying to invest time and energy and money into creating infrastructure that will carry us into the next decade. And I think that'll help us a lot. Now, our clients are going to see the value of that, but that doesn't help our clients. That helps us.
Right.
The things that are going to help our clients is our ability to bring more resources to bear, to bring more creativity to everything that we do. You could be a meeting planner planning the driest, most boring meeting, and you can make a creative difference to that meeting.
Right.
And we're really trying to make that part of our DNA. Instead of, it's not just reading BEOs. And we have to go to our clients and convince them that there's no cost to creativity. But here's an idea that might make your meeting more effective because it's about that strategic goal. It's not about just bringing people together and letting them talk at each other.
I love the human connection business as opposed to the event business. I think is one of the big takeaways I have. I think that's a kind of a brilliant strategy.
Thank you.
And I do believe that is the future because I believe that event organizers are collaboration artists,
yes,
and experience creators, and it doesn't have to be a physical event. It doesn't necessarily have to be a face-to-face event, but it has to connect you in some way.
Right. Absolutely.
And I don't know what that is. And I think that's changing every day. We have to be open to it.
Yes.
So if people want to get in touch with you to get either advice on selling and buying their businesses or on hiring you guys for to create programs, how do they do it?
You can email me at jguberman, JGUBERMAN at McVeigh, MCVEIGH.com. Or feel free to call me at 212-316-0052.
Great. Thanks, Jeff, for this incredible MBA in business development, selling and buying businesses, and the future, really, of how the event industry is going to look when it's not even called the event industry.
Thank you very much for having me.
All right, David, we're back in our podcast studio. What was so inspirational about this is that, bottom line, it's possible to reinvent your business.
Absolutely. I think that's what that recession did. It forced all of us think about new ways to think about things. And we saw so many of our friends go down, literally go down. Now, the big fear I have are the millennials who weren't in that at a senior level. So they're going to be forced to relive it again at some point.
Perhaps so do you think we're headed for another recession?
People are talking about it. I think that a lot of people are managing for the downside. The people that were through 2009 are managing that way. The people that have never experienced a recession it's the high times.
Mm-hmm. Well, so some of the strategies that we just heard is, identifying new types of clients, starting new lines of business like fabrication and drapes, and just coming up with ways, and the idea of not making yourself a commodity, coming up with the individual thing that you can provide that no one else can. Yeah,
I think Jeff really has filled out his thing that he's the role model for the industry for how to reinvent yourself.
Right. He also, this stuck with me. He Googled business plan. You just see that search. That's very relatable. I think, you can't give yourself an education on this, but his network also mattered.
His network mattered. And I think he was really smart about thinking, living in a way that he was not just letting things happen to him, but he was making things happen. It was the flip side of just reacting. Right. He was proactive.
Right. And he wasn't afraid of a cold call, right?
Yep.
But the message is dive in.
Dive in. Do it. Just do it. You can only, you're going to all make mistakes. We're all going to make mistakes. I certainly have made millions of them. So Beth, what is going on at BizBash?
So it's award season. We are in the home stretch right now, and we have so much coverage on bizbash.com for everyone to dive into. We posted our Grammys coverage. We have an Academy Awards Governor's Ball preview. That's the official party of the Academy. We have an interview with Mark's Garden in LA about award show flowers. And we have an inside look at gift bags. So, and then next week, of course, we're going to wrap it all up with coverage of the Academy Awards. So this is great event inspiration, particularly for design, but strategy as well. So you can find that bizbash.com/award-shows.
So are you seeing, I wanted to ask you a question. What are you seeing? Are you seeing it getting better this year than last year? You're seeing sort of a bit more experiential? Are we living the dream of experiential in this world?
There will definitely be trends to come out of awards season, and we hope to tease some of those out. But Grammys are interesting because that show, you had maybe less wattage in terms of the stars there, but Beyonce and Jay-Z were in LA hosting a brunch with Rock Nation. So these are still big events. That one had a look that was totally different from everything else. It was a brunch, first of all, so it's going to have a different look and feel. But Delta had a really great activation with all these really beautiful gold records, and so there's still that sheen of glamour and playing into these music themes and really celebrating the reason why you were there.
Yep, that's fantastic. So before we end, we always like to thank the people that help make this podcast possible. Claire Hoffman, our editorial director on the podcast, and Rebecca Pappas, who is our distribution person that gets the podcast out to everyone, and of course Dave Nelson, our producer, who puts it all together and makes it sound as good as possible. So what do we say, Beth?
Gather on.
Let's do it.
Thanks for listening to today's episode. If you like what you're hearing, be sure to subscribe to the podcast on iTunes or your favorite podcast app. We can be found on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Player FM, Google Play, and Pocket Cast. Be sure to leave us a rating and review. It helps others discover the GatherGeeks podcast. We'd also love to hear from you. You can leave feedback on Twitter at GatherGeeks or leave us an email, gathergeeks@bizbash.com. We hope you'll join us again for the next episode of GatherGeeks. Until then, gather on.